Hey, everybody, welcome back to Variant Intel. This is a podcast all about Deadrop, the new vertical extraction shooter by Dr. Disrespect co founded studio Midnight Society. Today is a very, very special episode. We have with us a special guest that I've been working together with him diligently over these past months to organize this interview. And we have none other than Edouard Brenneisen, the composer of the music of Deadrop. Edward, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you on the
Oh,
fire?
great. No, this is again. We've been in direct messages for many months. It seems just trying to organize things. You're obviously a very busy individual. Congratulations, by the way. I noticed that you have recently even won some awards that perhaps we can speak about at a later time. So, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Again, Edward is the composer for the music of Deadrop, and Edward, I'm gonna give you the floor here. Tell the community a little bit about you, your background. Obviously, you're a composer, but let's learn a little bit more about you and what you do.
Well, I'm a primarily a composer. I do work in video games, but also film and television. The last few years, it's been mostly video games, and I guess I worked on a handful of titles. I was a composer on Overwatch 2. I worked on League of Legends. I was a lead composer on League of Legends for several years. Um, and worked on Deadrop, which was a fantastic experience, as well as Call of Duty Mobile. Worked on projects that are not always released here, things like Honor of Kings, which is probably the single most played video game in the world, or one of them.
Hmm.
Um, and recently, I also worked on Multiverses, a game published by Warner Brothers.
Hmm.
I worked on New World, which is the
Oh yeah.
MMO by Amazon Games.
Hmm.
And I'm sure I'm forgetting another bunch of titles, but that's the gist of it. I'm originally from Paris, France,
Okay.
and I moved to the US about 15 years ago, and I'm now living in Los Angeles.
Okay. So in LA.
Yeah.
So you love the traffic there, right?
You know
No.
what? My commute to my studio, which is where I am right now, is about 10 seconds, so
Okay.
it's really cool. But
That works.
I've had to unfortunately attend some public events a couple nights in a row this week,
Hmm.
and I'm somebody who does not like lines or waiting, and I've been
Oof.
screaming in the car. Let's
Oof,
put it that
man.
way.
That
Yeah.
must have been quite a challenge.
Hmm.
Okay, so no, this is amazing. What a portfolio. Again, congratulations on all your success in recent times and past. The more I learned about you and your works after discovering, who you were, that you did the music on Deadrop, I just thought it was really fascinating, and I always thought to myself, if I have the opportunity to interview you, that it's I'm a gamer. I've been a gamer my whole life, as is a lot of the community here in the Dead community, and we all look for. We love the behind the scenes stuff, right? Anytime we can learn more about how the industry works, what people's professions are, how they contribute to these projects that we consume and love so much. I personally and share this sentiment that it's just a really cool thing. So when it comes to Dead Drop. So, can you tell us a little bit about how, like, the backstory of how did you get it? Get in contact with Midnight Society? Was there anyone specific, or was it more of a industry standard process by which they maybe reached out to you? How did that come about? How did you come about getting selected to do the music for Dead Drop?
So I know. I know only what I know of this, which is that one of my really good friends, Grump, is audio director on the project, and reached out to me one day and said, "Hey, I'm working on this thing. I think you'll like it. Um, and knowing what I know of you, I think you will be a really great fit for that." And that was for what turned out to be Snapshots 5.
Five, right,
And
right.
yeah, and that was basically where that whole thing started. Him reaching out to me and assembled a few things for them to review, and basically took it from there. Um, I had done some music that was really synth heavy. I had done some stuff in film and games that was guitar ish and like gritty, and so I had a portfolio to back up what his claim that I'd be a good fit.
Hmm.
And after having a few conversations with the creatives and the people at the Night Society, we decided to move forward, and the rest is history, as the cool kids say.
That's great. So that to me sounds. It seems like this is a pretty common thing in the industry where this is why I think marketing, not only yourself, but the more marketing you can do, and what I'm getting at is connections, right? It's a lot about who you know, and it seems and the more you grow your portfolio, the more connections you make naturally. So I'm not surprised to hear that you kind of knew somebody, and they kept you in the back of their mind and said, "Hey, we want you to come, check this out. We think you'd be a good fit." I love that. That's great. So it is, and Midnight Society, for the viewers listening who may not already be aware, Midnight Society is a very talent heavy studio. They have, it is considered an indie studio, but it is comprised of AAA talent, decades and decades worth of experience. Robert Bowling, the studio head, comes from a Call of Duty background. I mean, Darren Bacon, art lead. I mean, these guys and gals have all been in the industry for a very long time. So, um, again, I'm not surprised to hear that you knew somebody and it just kind of worked out. I mean, with their level of talent that they have at their studio, I'm sure they probably know everybody. So, and how cool, how awesome is it that you got to work on that? So, you mentioned Snapshot 5. What just out of curiosity, when would you say you started working on the music pieces for that versus when it launched? What would you say that time frame is, or was that dictated by the studio, or did they say, "Hey, we need this in X amount of months"? Can you divulge any of that?
I don't remember the specifics.
Hmm.
And moving forward, everything I'm going to divulge is this public information, which is
Okay.
all
Yep.
I know and
Yeah, we're
all that
not a
already
spoiler cast,
exists.
folks.
But no,
Yeah.
no, no. And if there's anything to spoil, I'm not in the know of it.
No, right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it started about almost a year ago, and I remember that because the Snapshot 5 launched a little bit before I went off to a trip in
Hmm.
San Francisco to attend the Game Developer Conference.
Hmm.
I think the turnaround time was pretty short, talking a few weeks
A
there.
few weeks. Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, so not a ton of time, and yeah, the cool thing about it is that I already work with the audio director, so him and I had been to battle together, which I think is really, it, in this industry, it's not just who you know, it's also how you know people. And
Okay.
if you've worked with people and if you've had a good experience working with them,
Hmm.
delivered a good product, and you're still friends in the end,
Yeah.
um, that's usually a good sign, and people tend to rely on that. But it was somewhat of a short turnaround. Um, but the brief was super clear, and spoiler alert: I'm a child from the '80s, and basically a lot of the stuff they were mentioning, our sounds are completely deeply ingrained into my who I am and what I do, and that was the really very a very simple thing for me to deal with. Uh, the thought that we'd be taking these sounds and pushing them into a very specific corner of their imagination made it really completely easy for me to grasp, and basically we were very quickly getting to what we wanted in terms of sounds.
No, That's actually incredible. I also am a child of the 80s, and coincidentally, so are a lot of the developers at Midnight Society. It's actually not everybody, but a lot of them. And you're right. Again, for the listener, if you're new to Deadrop, the lore, it's basically like an alternate reality world that is in the aesthetic of the 80s. So there's a lot of 80s references and vibes going on. So I could see your point exactly. Growing up in that era, it makes it a lot easier to personally connect. And I can only imagine as a creative, when you think about getting into your workflows and your inspiration, you're in the zone, as it were. That must have been very enjoyable.
Absolutely. I grew up like watching reruns of Miami Vice,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and then I love like you know I have a weird background, and used to be a guitar player,
Hmm.
and um, grew up listening to hair metal bands and all that stuff, and now I do collect guitar more than I play them, but I also have a love for synths, and you can't see it here because the camera's in front of me, but all around me and on the walls, there's like synths everywhere. And basically, I felt like this was going to be a fun project for me to get back to those roots and kind of reconnect with those early musical emotions there. And yeah, it didn't take a lot of work for me to figure out how to extrapolate what that alternate universe of what's this thing that stemmed from the 80s that ended up being its own very specific breed of art. It's not quite cyberpunk.
Right.
It's something more nuanced there. uh it's not 80s music either. It's the universe of Deadrop, but that was a kind of a clear target for me because that was the sound that I grew up listening
Hmm.
to. And I grew up, we are today in the world of Deadrop. Like, I have that biological age of what that music, I match the music basically,
Right. Right.
age
Kind of what
wise.
it represents is
Um,
essentially.
yeah.
No, this is great. So you were, and I remember getting on Twitter and tagging you when Snapshot 7 came around, and I asked, were you invited back to remix and do a new theme? And you said yes. And so was it kind of the same process? You just got an email or a phone call, and then it was like, hey, we'd love you to come back for Snapshot 7. And is that more or less how that happened?
Yep, exactly like that. So I think, circling back to Snapshot 5, everybody was happy with the music at Midnight Society, and they were positive it was going to be working for their project. But I think, judging from what I read from players, and the community is just really incredible,
Hmm.
how truthful and honest they are.
Hmm.
Um, I think they people really resonated with the music, so
Hmm.
it gave wings to the idea of just continuing to get new music as new snapshots were getting released. So I got invited back for Snapshot 7, um, and that Midnight Ride
Oh,
thing,
it's such a
and
great piece. It really is. It's awesome.
yeah,
I think
and
everybody collectively in the community really loves the Midnight Ride track. The remix on the main theme is also quite incredible. I don't want to leave that off the compliment train here, but the Midnight Ride was this unique, and it was this brand new thing too for Snapshot 7, that this new experience that ties into the core experience. So to
mhm.
create, I think they made a really interesting choice with bringing you on to say, not only are we going to create this new experience with the driving, but we want Edward to come back and give us this new entire piece, with this whole different feel, but it still fits. But like, so were there any different motivations, or should I say like different ideals that helped you create the Midnight Ride track that was a little bit different from, say, remixing the original piece?
So I think the overall we reached something that felt really good for what I'd seen from the art for Snapshot 5. it felt
Hmm.
satisfying. The feedback was that it broadly worked really well for everyone.
Hmm.
When I saw Midnight Ride, what I saw from not playing the game, but like the fantasy of being outside the game, there was a level of edge and danger that I recognized. And I think the fundamental difference there is I had just a little more runway to go into something that felt more aggressive, grittier.
Hmm.
Um, so there's definitely, there's the muscle car, but there's more muscle in the music as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
it definitely has that action sequence feel while still having, like you said, the like Dr. Disrespect says all the time, the dark alleyways, you know? Yeah,
yes.
it definitely does have that. Yeah. Um no, this is a really really interesting now well, I can't ask you this and because you either won't know and even if you do it's NDA material, but I personally hope that you are invited back to do more compositions for Deadrop as it progresses along. I don't think at this point that Deadrop would be the same without you. So I personally really
Thank you.
appreciate your music in the game, and it's just really cool. You talked about community. I did want to kind of focus on that a little bit. And this is going to be a huge shout out to a couple certain community members, and one in particular, William Morris. And the reason I want to bring him up is William Morris is he's also a composer. He's freelance. He and I have talked many a times, but I didn't know if you were aware that he had remixed in his own way the Snapshot 5 theme that you created. Are you aware of him and what he did with that?
I think I remember him reaching out to me, but I don't think I've heard his remix. No,
Okay, okay.
I'll
So,
have to check it out.
no, and this is the purpose of me bringing this up isn't to specifically plug him or try to create any kind of collaboration or anything like that. It's more to highlight the effect that you have with your music on this community. And he's not the only one that has done Dead Drop inspired music or been influenced by the music that you've created. That's really the highlight of the comment here. And yes, so William Morris has a full remix of the Snapshot 5 theme that was featured in some of the live streams for reveals for Snapshot 6 and things like that. And I think what's the term? Uh, when you imitate somebody's work, it's like a really high form of flattery, right? Um,
Hmm.
my question is for creators such as William and Metamora and other community composers that are out there that are interested in creating, what what advice could you give for people that are not only interested in creating music for video games, but perhaps just trying to break into the industry at all?
Oh, that's a vast, complicated
It's quite
subject.
loaded, I know.
Yeah, and you know what? It's very hard. I'm going to start with the obvious thing. You mentioned breaking in. You actually never quite break in. When people look at somebody's career and they're like, "Aha, that guy did that thing, and that's what put her on the map,"
Hmm.
or this guy became famous with that project. What you don't see is all the stuff before that,
Hmm.
all the all the effort that has led to that critical mass to finally knocking on that door, and the door opens, and this is your moment. um there Sometimes that happens very quickly, sometimes it takes a lifetime to get to that
Hmm.
opportunity, to that chance.
Hmm.
um so you never quite break in, and it's about, you have to manage expectations there.
Hmm.
um it's really about running a marathon. You have to be constantly doing the right things,
Hmm.
and those things are, now to get into the specific stuff, is treating your music composition story and that part of your life as a business.
Mhm.
Um, you have to be very good at what you do.
Mhm.
That's critical. But if you're going to be working with others, for others, there's a number of things that you need to be able to do. You know, take feedback gracefully, be very responsible with people's time and money and their baby, um,
Mhm.
and just overall be a pro. And it's not just about being a great composer. It's not about being a great producer, having great ideas. It's about being reliable, being able to be a part of that cog of that machine and being a cog in there. And like when all the little, you know, cog wheels like lock together and start spinning the right way, this is what brings momentum and this is what builds things.
Mhm.
Um, so you know, start thinking about your work in that way. The other thing I would also bring up is it's important to know how to do many things and be
Mhm.
somewhat versatile in your work, but ultimately people will call you for what you bring to the table, your
Mhm.
unique voice, and that can span many different genres.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, I think one of the successes that I've encountered has to do with bringing what I do best to a project.
Mhm.
And and I hope that people, when they call me, they know what I'm up to, and they're calling me for the right reasons.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I would encourage everyone to start thinking about like what makes them unique. Um, and I've had a few experiences where I've been on the other side, you know, like auditioning other composers for a variety of things, job positions or additional, you know, help on some things or um, production, this or that. And you know, it becomes incredibly obvious who has something that's unique to and that they can share with others, or who's um, not quite mature enough to figure that out.
Mhm.
And there's so many people who want to sound like John Williams or sound like Hans Zimmer. The truth is, they'll never quite get to that,
Right.
and it's never going to be something where, with very few exceptions, it's not going to be something where you're going to be able to build a career on, like being a copycat or being too close to this or that.
Right.
Um, Influences are one thing, but they shouldn't be at the expense of trying to bring something that's really meaningful. Um, and then the last thing I would advise is to start building relationships.
Yeah.
There's not really something that could be considered a bedroom composer if you never get out, if you never connect with others. And I mean that you could connect virtually, although a handshake
Mhm.
is always a
Right.
firm handshake
Yes,
is
firm
always
handshakes.
a firm handshake is always a you know, something that makes more sense to people ultimately. Um, it is crucially important to be out there in one way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Um, and social media is useful. It's not the only thing that, you know,
Mhm.
you being a social media star is not going to necessarily make you a
Mhm.
working composer. Um, but you know, there's so many different ways of doing it. And I have personally struggled with that because I'm a super introverted person,
Mhm.
pretty shy, and I've had to fight that off for so many years and find my own way of doing this thing, networking and connecting with people. Um, when, you know, sometimes I would just rather be in my studio creating music, and but that's ultimately not what brings you work.
Right. No, this is great insight, and I do appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of the community will too, and other aspiring composers. It's so you know, the takeaway I got from that is definitely focus inward on your own talent and your own unique offering, and make sure to properly market yourself. It seems really to, like you said, make those connections and get out there. You know, creating masterpieces in your bedroom is great, but if you'd never meet anybody, then perhaps it's all for naught, right?
It is absolutely all for naught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is great. And so that's really wonderful. I think the last thing here today that we're gonna touch on real quick is I wanted to ask you, what are some of your most favorite pieces that you've had the privilege of working on?
Hmm.
And it's okay if it's not Deadrop. I mean, Deadrop is one piece of many that you've done. So I just like to ask, you know, what are some things that you just found the most challenging creatively or had the most fun creating? What was your favorite experience?
You know, let's start with the theme for Deadrop, which
Okay.
I think somehow really perfectly encapsulates what that world is about.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it was it, it came to me pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this is the instinct is talking there, and I'm somebody who I don't spend a lot of time generating music.
Mm-hmm.
It just comes to me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's after years and years of training and writing music every day. It
Mm-hmm.
just it's a muscle I've developed, and now I turn on the faucet and something comes out, and sometimes it's good. Uh, this time it worked out to be pretty pretty good right off the bat, but it was not gelling quite right,
Okay.
and it took us a minute to figure out why. And our audio director on the project, Grump, he was super helpful, and he said, "Look, you have a verse and you have a chorus, to put it broadly, an A section and a B section, and they're both great, but you're kind of muddying things right now with having your verse. You should cut it out." And he was absolutely right. The second we took that out, everybody was like, "Whoa!"
Boom.
And you know what? As I'm growing into this career and into my craft, one of the things that I seem to be struggling with the most now is not so much generating ideas,
Mm-hmm.
um, but more so editing the not excellent part of the IDs out
Mm-hmm.
of out of the equation. Um, you're working on something, like, oh, this is it, and a lot of times I feel like you're so close to the work itself that having this very sharp ear slash eye of the editor and being able to say, like, hey, this would be so much better without this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and just cutting that out. So that was one of the creative challenges on this. And once we'd gone through that, it's funny, like that's all it took, was removing music, not even adding stuff, not changing
Yeah, just
anything.
taking a layer and stepping it back.
Yeah, yeah, just like, boom, we're gonna make this um, a much simpler story, and
Mm-hmm.
somehow that was it. Um, let's see, other projects I've done that have worked really well. Well, it was recently Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, and
Yep.
I you know look back at some of the music I'd written for some projects coming out of China, and I remember 2020, I did a bunch of music for a game called Honor of Kings,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to do something which I absolutely love, which is learn about the history and culture,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole series about the Three Kingdoms, which is something from historical moments in Chinese history,
Mm-hmm.
which was super fascinating. And I had to write those three themes and other broad themes around that. And the a big challenge is that we were writing the music, got everything approved, recorded it, and somehow there was a creative pivot after everything had been done,
Hmm.
and the client wanted me to go back and, although everything was finished, and
Hmm.
like self-standing, wanted me to write more music in there.
Hmm.
And they wanted a double string quartet, which is already a very busy thing. So I had to work, inside this thing, that structure that was already set, and basically do the finest work possible with, not the most instinctual thing to do, but a, a metric shit ton of notes, and make it work. It was really like being a jeweler, like the crafting the most incredibly detailed timepiece, or something like that.
Hmm.
And it turned out to be really great and very lyrical, very technically incredibly challenging for musicians, and they absolutely killed it. That was wonderful. But that's music that at the core of it still has the things that I love about music, and things that people call me for, which is memorable themes, and like really impactful emotions. Um, and another project I've been, I really like, is the last thing ish that got released, which is my score to New World,
Hmm.
the expansion, Rise of the Angry Earth, and that was super fun because they wanted some themes on that, which is something that people come to me for, like, hey, write us something memorable. But they also wanted other things, and I was able to really kind of move away from what what people consider great thematic music, and try and capture the sense of impact that I get from that, writing that kind of music, but do that with textures instead.
Hmm.
Um, and that was certainly challenging and different, um, but super super fun. And I grew up playing all sorts of games, including MMOs, and that was my first MMO. And absolutely loved working on that project. That was really very cool.
Now,
Um,
is the forgive me for interjecting.
oh, yeah.
Is the pieces for New World, were those the ones, or was there one in there that's what you recently won the award for?
Yeah, for the whole score,
For the
I
whole
won
score.
the
Okay.
Hollywood Music and Media Award for Best Video Game Score
Nice.
of 2023. Thank you.
Congratulations. No, that's look, I just based on what little bit I already knew, plus what you've offered here this evening, um, the industry is extremely competitive, and it's no small feat to be recognized in such a way. So, no, hats off. I actually, now that I know that you have done some of the music for this game, I think I tried out New World when it first came out briefly, and moved on to some other games, but I imagine I'll have to try to revisit and see where it's at these days. It sounds like they've been developing it continually. And again, if Mr. Edouard Brenneisen has got the score, then the award-winning score, then I should probably go check that out. So, that's
That was a big surprise. That one,
no,
the award.
that's
Yeah.
that's really great. Last thing, very very last thing, I promise. Are you looking forward to playing future iterations of Deadrop, and if so, are you gonna jump into the Discord and join the community in that?
So I'm already on Discord, and
Okay.
I've already played Deadrop.
Mm-hmm.
I am, and my friends with whom I play easier games on Saturday evenings
Okay.
will tell you that I'm quite mechanically challenged,
Okay.
and and I got slapped at Deadrop,
Okay.
and that's absolutely normal. But I wish I had more time to play video games and get to
Mhm.
be good at it.
That's
But
understandable.
as you and I were talking, I'm a dad, and I work the rest of the time. So
No, it's understandable.
it's been a
Video games are one of
challenging.
those luxuries of time, and time is the most valuable luxury. So we all completely understand that.
And it's not for lack of wanting to play video
Hmm.
games. I do miss that dearly. I play a little bit. I play a bit of Call of Duty on the weekends just
Hmm.
because it's super easy to get into and not as punishing.
Right, right.
Um, but I do look forward to the continuation of Deadrop, and it's been um, it's been really heartwarming to see how involved the community is, how involved the people at Midnight Society are, and how much they love
Mhm.
their game. Like I remember, we were talking about GDC last year. Um, I saw Robert Bowling
Mhm.
just talk about his game and give super cool presentations there, and like the heart is in the very best place. It's I have no doubt that this game has a bright future ahead of it.
Well,
Um,
yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's the general sentiment to most of us in the community that are, especially the founders pass holders. Um, and I personally have been to two live events, the Snapshot 5 and 7, and gotten to meet the developers and spoken with many of them and community members alike. And yes, this community, I brag on it all the time. I think it's the best community in gaming. Um, uh, for the viewers listening, of course, if you want to join the Midnight Society Discord, that's where all the fun's happening. You can come play Dead sessions with Edward and folks like us, and try your hand at the game. And I'm a lot like Edward. I definitely get slapped around a lot, so I can relate on that front. Edward, thank you so much for joining us for this session of the podcast. It's really it means a lot to me, and I know the community is just going to be thrilled to put a face to the name and the music, of course. And yes, when you talk about community support, please know that this community absolutely loves your work, and we very much hope that you are invited back to continue your amazing work on Deadrop.
Thank you so very much, and thanks to everybody who's been playing the game and being super supportive.
Yeah.
And it's they're very beyond doing the actual work itself and collaborating with people. I must say that um, there's really nothing quite as gratifying as people responding to the work that you put out in the world and finding some level of truth to it and comfort and
Mhm.
enjoyment. And the Dead Drop community has been particularly vocal about the music, and especially compared to its size, it was really amazing to get that love and feel it. Like I work in isolation 10-12 hours a day, and then being able to open Twitter and see like, oh, you know wow,
Well,
this is actually resonating with people is wonderful.
we would love to see you at the next live event whenever that happens in the future. There's no plans yet. They are, heads down building the game for a later release this year. However, if they do plan a future live event, I would certainly hope that you get the opportunity to show up. I would love to offer a firm handshake. Yeah,
Likewise,
yeah.
likewise.
All right, Edward. So before we get out of here, where can people follow you and your works?
You can, it's a good question. I am not very good at social media. I'm most active on Instagram.
Okay.
Uh, and you can also find my work on my website. That's
Mhm.
eb-music.net,
Mhm.
eb-music.net. And I'm also on X, and though not as frequent of a poster there, but definitely don't hesitate to reach out. I do eventually get back to everybody.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Edward. We really appreciate it. That's going to do it for this episode of Variant Intel. Remember, Variant Intel is now exclusively on the 12 a.m. Central YouTube channel. You can also follow us on X. And that's going to wrap it up. So I guess we're going to get out of here. We will see you in the tower. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you very much.